Good morning, everyone. Oh, please. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I never like it when people do that and make me say good morning, but it's such a bad feeling to say good morning and not have anyone respond.
No, you know.
I have been asked to make two announcements. The first is to the SphinxConnect Fellows. Do we have any SphinxConnect Fellows here? So ladies and gentlemen, please check your email for an important announcement from Sphinx. So if you haven't done that, please do that. And then everyone, please join us for the honors concert at noon. Buses will run from 11 to 11:30. It says somewhere in our materials where buses will leave from. I don't have it on this piece of paper, but I'm sure we'll all find each other. So you are in Small but Mighty. If you don't want to be in Small but Mighty, this would be the time to make that decision. Using chamber music for social justice. I'm Margaret Lioi, and I'm the CEO of Chamber Music America. We are the national organization for the chamber music profession. And chamber music is, well, I think it's the answer to everything, but the great thing about chamber music is that you can have a career in chamber music that manifests itself in your artistic goals as well as your social goals. And not every profession in music allows you to do that, but chamber music does.
Sure.
So we have with us today two proud Chamber Music America members. Ashleigh Gordon, who is a violist and the artistic and executive director of Castle of Our Skins, and Armando Castellano, who is a French hornist and the founder of Quinteto Latino, a wind quintet. And we thought a lot about, because it's a huge topic, and we thought, what are the things that we can tell you in 50 minutes about this topic? So we have a plan, and our plan is we will talk a little bit about chamber music and social justice. We will have plenty of time for your questions, which you can send us on Slido, and I think there are microphones here as well. And then we'll have a quick wrap-up. So hopefully that will work for all of you. And so I want to get right to it. And our first question, we thought a lot about this, because when we talk about social justice, it means different things to different people. So Ashleigh, I'd like to start with you and ask you, how do you define social justice? And how does Castle of Our Skins address your social justice goals?
Sure. As you said, it is a very personal response, and I think with what I would love to share with you today about the genuinity that I've found in my work in trying to answer some of those questions. A little bit before I get into that, just about me, I am a violist, and I'm a violist who never wanted to be in an orchestra. That was for me a very grappling question that I had to face, because school, this is the sort of pride goal, and it wasn't one that I felt called to. I'm also an educator who finds a lot more value and meaning in one-to-one mentor-mentee relationships than I do in a large classroom setting. I'm a creative who really enjoys taking a concept and seeing it into fruition. I'm also a nerd who loves research. All of this is related to my work with Castle of Our Skins and beyond. And I'm also a passionate administrator who really enjoys the autonomy of working for myself. All of those things have definitely shaped the work that I'm doing with Castle of Our Skins, and for me, what I would consider a genuine way. I studied at New England Conservatory in Boston, where I still live, and there I met Anthony Green, who is a composer and also co-founder of Castle of Our Skins. We had a mutual sense of respect for each other's craft, still do, a mutual sense of understanding in the importance of education, very much wanted to stay connected with one another, even though we lived on opposite sides of the country and then eventually opposite sides of the Atlantic. And very selfishly wanted to explore the music of Black composers, for both whom we after all of our higher education degrees, could list a handful of. So very selfishly, we wanted to sort of dive into an uncelebrated, in the way that it should be, genre and world, and have since created this organization. Castle of Our Skins is now in its 6th season. It's a Boston-based concert and educational series celebrating Black artistry through music. I say through music, yes, but we also invite other arts and pride ourselves in inviting other arts. So visual arts, spoken word, history is always very much relevant to the work that we're doing. We also have a very flexible chamber ensemble. So while I'm a violist and love string quartets, I also really enjoy small, intimate piano quintets, or working with a composer and commissioning something inspired by some aspect of Black history or Black culture, working with a dancer or a historian embedded into the program to be able to create a really engaging narrative around a particular topic. The name Castle of Our Skins is, I think, also very related to our mission in trying to change a narrative. The name comes from the poem for Nina by Nikki Giovanni, which, to paraphrase, says that we're all imprisoned in the castle of our skins. Some of us had said, if that's the fact, I'm going to treat my skin as a beautiful palace. It's going to be this beautifully ordained fabric that is going to be celebrated, which is certainly not the narrative related to Blackness that is popular, right? Historically and currently. So we take very seriously our mission of trying to change a narrative through what it is that we're doing, which, yes, is music, but also so much more. At the heart of what we do is fostering cultural curiosity and education. So again, in changing narratives, wanting to debunk the fact that, or popular notion, I guess, of Black creativity, Black voices in classical music as being maybe a newness when it has existed for centuries. So elevating the music of Black composers, flooding the stage with Blackness in terms of the music, in terms of the historical context, in terms of the representation as best we can, promoting the music of Black women composers, promoting a historical narrative. So a lot of our concerts will focus on creating a sense of relevance, creating a context. So what is normally maybe perceived as being unfamiliar on stage, wanting to create as much of a context of familiarity as possible through the music, through the lives, through the anecdotes, through a historical relevance to today. We also very much want to deepen and broaden the narrative of what Black music by Black composers is. So as much of a historical importance on African American spirituals and vocal music, there is so much more, so many more genres, so many more styles, so many more composers from across the African diaspora to experiment with and to showcase. So we pride ourselves in having a broad repertoire and pride ourselves doing it in a way with chamber music, which is inherently intimate. So what better space to delve into maybe something that is unfamiliar than in a very safe, closed, welcoming, inviting space as a chamber music situation, chamber music setting. So with Castle of Our Skins, it is a flexible ensemble, and for me, my historian and my visual artist and my dancer are as important as the violist and the pianist. Really to create a thought-provoking, holistic concert experience. We, with our concerts, very much are interested in creating something that is relevant in many ways. So some themes that we've explored are mass incarceration, a concert celebrating Black feminism. We have a concert in June as a counter to that, celebrating Black masculinity called I Am a Man, which is about the Civil Rights Declaration, celebrating Black masculinity and humanity. Concerts inspired by Black visual art. We just had a call for proposals, inviting composers, any ethnicity, any nationality, to write us a piece inspired by the African American quilting tradition, and to design a whole entire concert from concept to music that is very holistic, very engaging in that kind of way. And again, as I said, we have a lot of multidisciplinary projects to create a really well-rounded first dive into, for some of our audience members, into Black artistry. We do something very, very similar in classrooms, which for me as an educator, that one-to-one connection is hugely important, and I find such great value in nurturing the seed, which was the presentation prior. Planting a seed at such an early age, I think, is so critical, so important. If you want to change the narrative, then you have to offer an alternative narrative. And especially for someone who's young, who maybe doesn't have a narrative, then let me be the first one to show you a narrative. We have what we call these edutainment recitals, which provide anecdotes along with music from Black composers, largely string quartets, and go into community spaces and showcase the beauty and the artistry that has been there for centuries to as many people as we're able to offer. Educational workshops, which I know you do as well. One of my favorites is A Little History, which was written by Anthony Green for me, for solo narrating violist, and I tell the story of 9 different figures in Black history through original music, original poetry, and audience interaction. So we are interested in doing that with kids, being young, young future prospects. Interested in doing that on an academic level, so we do college residencies as well, and engage with that sort of one-to-one interface and changing a narrative with one person. It doesn't have to be global, but in terms of changing a narrative and having a dialogue which would hopefully lead to greater outcomes is something that we take very much to heart in the work that we do. And then for me, in thinking of this panel, this presentation about how to inspire not the next Castle of Our Skins, but how to inspire something that is able to be so central to a social justice kind of mindset. These are 3 things, but I have a lot more in the time that I have. For me, it was really important to evaluate my own intentions and to be genuine. So teaching in a large classroom for me wasn't the end all, and being in an orchestra, but what are my strengths, and how can I make those my mission, right? Being a Black woman violist in some situations may not be my strongest cards to play, but certainly in this situation it is, and I've elevated that. Understanding your local community, listen more than you talk, and be curious about yourself and inquisitive about yourself. For me, all music is new music for my audience, whether it's written today, whether it was written centuries ago. And the fact that it is new, it has a feeling of being unfamiliar. So really creating a context that is welcoming and familiar for your audience. I think there's a lot more to share, but I want to hear from Armando as well, and from you as well at the Q&A.
Thanks, Ash.
So Armando, would you tell us, do you define social justice in the same way? And how do you address it through your work with Quinteto Latino?
Yeah. I think we talked about this in this previous session too. They were mentioning vulnerability and that as a practice in the work that we do as artists and as change agents. And so that maybe I should just start. I want to tell a little bit about my story, how it relates to the our themes here today. And I'm going to go way back. I started playing the trumpet in the 4th grade. I wanted to play flute. My dad said, no, you have to play trumpet. He wanted me to play mariachis, I think. He had mariachi dreams. Because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. It was a middle class, a very middle class neighborhood, but my parents were the first people of color in that neighborhood, and they fought to live there. And they knew that I was going to have better resources at the schools in that part of town. And so I was good at music. It really was a place that I felt like I could shine, because in 4th grade I still really couldn't read. I was not doing well in school academically, and socially it was a mess for me. I grew up with a really strong sense of culture. As a Mexican American, as a 3rd generation, I can still speak Spanish, 3rd generation Mexican American Latino. There's a lot of people like me in California. And I still had a strong sense of culture, but I went to a school that was predominantly white. In junior high, I had an awesome band teacher. He let me play all the instruments. I used to take one home at a time, teach it to myself, and then he let me play it in band. I went through the whole band like that. It was amazing and a great opportunity for me. Although I excelled at band, I still socially and academically really was having a hard time, just barely holding on. I felt like music really boosted my self-esteem and got me to really stay there in that situation and persevere. In high school, they needed more French horn players, so in 9th grade, I tried the French horn for the first time, and what I found, it was way harder than any other instrument I had played. I couldn't just pick it up and play it, and I think that's what made me stick to it. I remember in 10th and 11th grade, somehow I found youth orchestra, and I fell in love with orchestra. And I fell in love with European classical music, period. We used to watch all the classical music I could on TV, and it was really, I just fell head over heels for it, and I loved orchestra. And something happened when I was 17. It was a really defining moment. I put this picture here. I think I was about 19 when I cut this picture. And it's, when I was 17, I saw the first ever person of color playing French horn. 17 years old, okay? It's very, and I realized when I saw him how frustrated I was up to that point. I had been looking. I had been looking for someone that looked like me, playing in a professional situation, or any situation playing French horn. I hadn't seen, and I used to watch it on TV all the time since I was a kid. And I remember something clicked in my head, oh, wait a minute, maybe I could do this. You know, my dad worked at Safeway, a grocery store. My mom was a secretary, and they didn't have a college education. They didn't know how to steer me, and I didn't know who to ask. But it was a real defining moment for me. After high school, thank God they have community college. I went to community college, and there, finally, academically, my brain caught up to my academics, and I excelled. And I practiced a lot. I worked. And I went to community college for 4 years, and then I transferred to UCLA. And at UCLA, I studied 2 things. One is classical music. I was a French horn major. And I also studied this thing called Chicano studies. I don't know if we still use that word, Chicano. It's like an old-fashioned word for Latino. It used to be Mexican American. It changed a lot. And it's essentially the study of Latinos in the United States and our heritage here in the US. And I studied those 2 things. But what happened is there was never, ever any place where those 2 things connected for me, ever. And all my music friends were like, why are you doing that over there, and what is that? And all my Chicano studies friends were like, what is a French horn? You know, I was really torn, and I was like hiding these identities from each place, right? It was very frustrating. It made me really sad and worried about my career choices and worried about my ability to be able to sustain these 2 lives being pulled in 2 directions. I was able to persevere that, and I went on to the Manhattan School of Music in New York and got my master's degree in French horn performance there. Here's what I realized after all that education I'd paid for and worked so hard for, that in all the orchestras I played in, the summer festivals, all the practice room hours of playing in the practice room, all the etudes, every single solo, all the chamber music. Not once did I ever play a composer who was Latino. Not one time. And that really upset me. and I wanted to, I felt like I really wanted to do something about it. And to my best recollection, every single composer I played was male and was European based, 100% in all those years. And so I, like Margaret said, I found that in chamber music I could really have some self-identity expression. So I started an ensemble called Quinteto Latino. And there's two reasons I started Quinteto Latino. One was because I want to perform works by people who look and sound like me, who come from my culture, okay? I just want to, all right? I'm sorry. I was very frustrated at that point, and I'm just going to do it. And two, though, I want to show classical music, contemporary music, chamber music, that there are so many Latino composers that we don't even consider playing here in the US, and that you can build a whole arts organization, a successful performing arts organization based on that single premise, performing composers who are Latinos. And we've been doing that 100% for 15 years. And there's boxes of music I'll never be able to play. Literally, we're choosing for next season. I went through like 3 boxes plus a bunch of other files on the computer just to decide. There's so many pieces for us to choose from. It's amazing. So Quinteto Latino is 3 things. The first thing is we're a performing arts organization. So we perform formal concerts, we do tours, we do assembly concerts, and some of my favorite projects are to do, we go into communities, we have a cohort in that community, and we create a project with them. Sometimes they do the composing, sometimes they do performing side by side, and we perform in that community with the cohort, okay? And sometimes it's kids with instruments, sometimes it's not. In many of the communities I work in, they don't have music programs. So we're an advocacy organization. So we, of course, advocating for the composers, trying to get other arts organizations, just look at the composers. I'm not even going to try to get you to play them. Just look at the names, okay? Just consider them as beyond Cinco de Mayo, okay? Consider them on your programming. Just look at them. Look at, there's a string quartet. Yes, there's more. Also advocating for musicians. Who are we as arts organizations hiring, and what do those musicians look like? We talk about race and diversity in all the rooms we're in. In our formal concerts, we are talking about diversity, okay? I am talking about these themes while we're playing. I'm inviting the audience to be a part of social change by just hearing a concert of all Latino composers. They're a part of a change, okay? And I invite them to be a part of that and welcome and thank them for that. And we have one more program that we started last summer where we call it Seminario, where I'm bringing a cohort of musicians of color to California to perform Latino composers, but to also to have a safe space for us to talk as artists of color in classical music. When I play in an orchestra, I'm almost 100% the only Latino, almost always, okay? And that 4 percentage point in orchestras, that's me, okay? I'm there, I'm sitting there. And it's lonely. We're also an education organization. All 5 of us are teaching artists. But beyond just the classroom teaching and the workshopping residency I do, I really set my role as an educator, teaching about cultural relevancy art, who's getting art or not. I'm also showing teachers, so we're working with teachers that didn't have arts ed, right? School administrators that did not have arts education. Or funders that are not funding necessarily culturally relevant and competent art in the schools. And so I'm trying to educate in all those circles about all those issues. Okay, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to stop there. I don't have a lot of time. And
okay.
I'm excited about the questions
well,
that are going to come up too.
I would be excited about these questions too. However, I am getting a prompt here that says, Safari cannot open the page. And I said when we were backstage, they have entrusted the technology to the oldest person in the room. So I apologize for that. But if somebody could come and perhaps help me with this.
Right.
In the meantime, oh, you're so kind. Thank you. Thank you so much.
she's coming too.
Okay. Excellent. I was going to ask this question myself. So what resources can we access? Oh, where did it go? To see Latino composers. Is there a listing on your website?
There isn't a listing on my website, but I have a couple of things. One idea is to just be in touch with me, really trying to create networks of Latinos. So if you're here at this conference, please hand me your card, have a conversation with me, ask me for coffee, connect with me on social media. I want to create a community of Latinos doing this work. I don't have that list of composers, but I'm happy to share them with your and resources, publishers that I found that are publishing this specifically. Yeah.
Great. Okay, here's another one. In a world driven by classics and canon, how, from your experience, do you market diverse concerts to a general public that may never have heard of the composers? Ashleigh, what about that?
Yeah, the thing with canon, for me, this inflexible, has a seal of approval. You're in or you're out, based on omission. Kind of mindset I very much try to debunk. Again, most of what I perform is new, regardless of when it is written. So if I don't present it on in February or Cinco de Mayo or something that automatically casts it as an other, but if I present it in a way that is familiar, based on familiarity and with a sense of normalcy, that you're listening to beautiful music first and foremost, that you are hearing artistry at a high, excellent level. These are the composers. This is their history. They're people. They're creators just like you, and have a sense of connection, as you would have a sense of connection to any other composer that you would see in symphony hall or whomever at any other kind of hall. But creating a sense of normalcy and familiarity is what I strive to do.
Armando?
Yeah, marketing. Say the question again.
In a world driven by classics and canon.
Classics and canon. Okay, good. A couple things I want to say. One is I work hard to navigate my identity and how I'm going to express it. Okay. If you need me to be Chicano or Latino, or I don't really want to be Hispanic, but I can have that conversation with you. Or My bottom line is, how am I going to create the social change in the communities and get resources into the communities that I need to? So I'm constantly navigating my culture. How Latino, we have this conversation about the website, how Latino can it be or not? What's palatable within the classical music community? And I go back and forth in all seasons, even in our programming, how we talk. So it just depends on what space and who I'm trying to sell to and what's going to make money. And the most expensive concerts I charge more than ever is Cinco de Mayo. They ask me, I'm like, no problem, here's my price. Like almost double. It's almost double. No problem. Okay? I'm just trying to, I feel like it, as people of color in this country, you are navigating this multiculturalism, and in different communities, how much you can express yourself or not. It just depends, And I think that answers that question. I just have to be thoughtful about how I'm talking about it or not, and it's just an added layer of work that we have to do to be able to represent in communities that aren't diverse. So we work twice as hard.
Yeah. I would add just one other thing. I think with the canon and with classics, yes, excellence has earned them those roles, those titles, but also familiarity and frequency in which they're presented.
Yeah, there you go.
So if we are really to be change agents, then it's not just February, it's not just Cinco de Mayo, it's not just Black Music Month. It's 365, 7 days a week to be an advocate for the music.
Yeah.
So while my friend punches in her code,
sorry, Margaret.
Thank you so much. I have a question for each of you.
They could go to the mics too, I guess.
Yeah, you can also go to the mics. Ashleigh, do you tour, or are you very much Boston-based with your group?
We do a lot in Boston. We have done residencies in Pennsylvania. I've done educational workshops in Bulgaria, but largely our work is based in Boston.
And Armando, you definitely tour.
We tour, but not a whole lot, you know. And I have very strong regional collaborators, funders, presenters that I turn to and keep in good contact with, so that when I have projects that I can offer, or communities I want access to, I still have those, yeah.
So my question is, when you are self-presenting, you have a lot of control over your own marketing. Do you have that same control if someone is presenting you? And how do you manage that?
No, I don't have the same control, but I find a way to be happy with it. So if I disagree with languaging or imaging that they're doing, or how they're presenting it, I will literally write a new narrative and send it to them, and it will be a negotiation.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to settle for a kind of tokenism if someone wanted to couch it that way. Yeah.
That's really true. You know, I was thinking how from the beginnings of Quinteto Latino to now, how much I can express my culture and identity has changed, right? The more cachet, the more concerts we do, the higher level of professionalism we perform, and the higher level of gigs that we get, the funding, I can express myself more and more about these issues that I'm talking about on a regular basis. That till the last few years, like I said, we're talking about diversity in all of our concerts. I'm not, and I'm doing it in a culturally competent way for the audience. Okay, I know my audience. I know audience development. I know what they're going to feel safe with and feel like they're part of change without overwhelming them. You know, I know that conversation, but my point is that that I can. The more cachet I have, the more I can talk about it.
So, okay, we have another question. I'm curating a chamber music lecture demo on Black classical music for an audience of white senior adults. What are important messages and figures to include?
Well, you can do, I don't know the instrumentation for this, but for instance, when I have done these kind of works, it's with string quartets. So I like to do a sort of a survey. Chevalier de Saint-Georges, contemporary of Mozart, is a great place for me to start. And I will include maybe some William Grant Still, some Florence Price, who certainly has a big name now and may be familiar, probably the most familiar, out of those three, and include Jessie Montgomery. I don't know if she's here. She's here somewhere today. And maybe try to showcase a variety of music. Depending on the audience, if I think I can get away with something a little bit more edgy, a little bit more pop infused, I may do some fusion pieces like Daniel Bernard Romain, or I may just keep it to something very beautiful. Florence Price's music, it's just gorgeous vocal music. Adolphus Hailstork, I think, too, is also really vocal. Chevalier de Saint-Georges is incredibly classical in style. I try to survey, you know, getting a toe in the water kind of music. That would be a great entry point, and then to be able to broaden from there. I try hard not to program something that sounds, again, in my way of trying to expand for maybe an older audience. I try not to program spirituals in that situation, only because I want them to know that there is so much more than spirituals.
This is a question I think is an excellent.
I don't get to answer that question.
Well, this was, go ahead. This was about Black classical music, but
For an older white audience.
For older white
But you could
audience,
insert whatever.
But you know, insert any kind of music.
I was just thinking how I don't. It's about knowing my audience, and I talk about Latino classical music also. I mean, I talk about Latinidad and I talk about diversity, but I really talk about it that it really sounds like all other classical music, because it truly does. You know, what I get from a lot of times from educated, well-intentioned presenters and audiences is I'm thinking actually that I'm playing salsa and cumbias and banda. Okay, this happens regularly. Okay, so again, accepting my education role, like listening. So this is, okay, I'm just learning. This is where they're coming from, and I'm going to have this conversation one more time. That, again, this sounds like any other contemporary and classical music that you're already listening to and playing, actually.
Exactly.
Okay, and so it's going to be fine for them. Actually, they're going to relate to it like they do any other classical music concert.
This question, I think, is really important, particularly for all of the artists. I mean, we are primarily artists in the room. How do you balance the research time, looking for these composers and pieces, with the requirements for practicing and other gigs?
Can I answer that one first?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I studied with Ensemble Moderne at the International Ensemble Moderne Academy in Frankfurt. I was there for like a year and a half. I came back in the summertime to Boston. Also, my appreciation for new music, that sort of presenting new music comes from there as well. But I came back to Boston in the summertime, which is a horrible time to move and a horrible time to find work. So I couldn't get a job as a dog walker. I couldn't get a job at a coffee shop. So I had literally 9 to 5 to spend in libraries, just totally nerding out. And that is, I know, completely an exception to the norm. But it was huge for me to be able to come up with dozens of concerts worth of repertoire without repeating pieces or composers. I was also fortunate enough to spend two trips at the Center for Black Music Research in Chicago, not too far. We're in the Midwest, not too far from here, somewhere, which was amazing to be able to allot a week and have, again, this sort of 9 to 5 nerd session. I very much enjoy that. It can be obsessive and it can be dominating, but I've learned at this point now to manage my days. So my morning is Castellano related, and I have carved out viola practice time, and I have teaching and rehearsal times. So time management is something that I am still learning to be able to do because I'm very passionate in a lot of different areas. But having unemployed freedom in the summer was beautiful.
Armando?
I am not a researcher. I don't like going to the library so much. I love the libraries, but I'm not good at that. So two things. One is I surround myself people who are and ask them the right questions at the right times. Number two, I make sure my identity is clear. Latino composers, send them to me. Okay? And I just look up, do they have wind quintets? Yes or no? Or just email them, do they have any? I'm constantly doing that. And bottom line, go to bed early, get up very early. Okay? I'm up 2.5 hours before my kids wake up. I'm practicing. I'm already answering emails. I'm doing getting a lot done before breakfast. And I don't waste any time. I'm not wasting any time. Yeah.
Yes, I can attest to that because I'm on the East Coast and Armando's on the West Coast, and I'm getting emails from him sometimes at 8 o'clock Eastern time saying, "What are you doing?" But anyway, yes, please.
Hi, my name's Jamie. From what I've seen, a lot of chamber music ensembles that are very successful have a lot of programs attached to it. I assume, because you mentioned you were in your 6th year, and I think you said 15th year, that wasn't your first year. So in the first year, what did that look like? And then what led it to expansion? Like, what was the success that pushed it forward?
Well, I'd say my first years were, I remember the first season, I got us like 3 or 4 background music concerts, and then I hired 4 musicians based on those concerts, and I already had the rep. Like, the rep was sitting around. You can get it. You just Google, in 2 seconds, you have a bunch of rep. And so that was our first season. I have the same musicians as I had in the first season. But I'm not, just a miracle we're together. Which is an important point, too. And then it grew from there. I just kept trying to sell. I had a chamber music job just out of graduate school for a few years, and I learned chamber music from that person who we weren't managed. We were all self-involved, self-managed, and so I learned from him. And but that was how the beginning looked.
Yeah, for me, we had 1 program and 1 educational workshop. The A Little History that I shared was our educational workshop. And the 1 program was already a kind of a template for the kind of programming that we wanted to do. It already had spoken word and readings from various speeches related to love. So Dr. King and a variety of other speeches were included in the program. It already had chamber music. It already had visuals. So it was already to the scale that we were interested in doing. Super naive, super humble beginnings. Let's do a concert. And then that, of course, generated so much interest, and especially in Boston. I find myself when I'm at conferences or gateways or things like this in other Black musician spaces that I'm like the only Bostonian. And it's very true, because there's not a culture, there's not a community in Boston that is thriving and rich like in other cities. Yeah. So very early on in that first season, we found that there was a huge void, and that this one little humble beginning of a concert and educational workshop filled it. So how could we not continue that? It grew to be, and I'm sure for you, it grew to be larger than myself or Anthony or any of the musicians. This was something that we were kind of indebted to see moving forward.
I want to add two things. One is that I always charge, even in the beginning when it was just a few $100s and I was giving everybody like $25, I always pay the musicians for all rehearsals and all concerts. It's not a flat fee, and they get the same amount. No matter if I'm charging this amount or this amount, all the musicians get the same amount. And it's been like that from the beginning. And I feel like I was saying in the beginning, I had to be very flexible with the programming and the pieces I'm playing and how I talk about it. Now that I have more cachet, and it's been a number of years, I can make more executive decisions. More playing, like we're thinking about what we're going to do next season and how much contemporary music, which we really love to play, but we have to be really thoughtful about how we present it and how we bookend it. But we're able to make more decisions about the programming because we have more cachet now than we did in the early years. But it took a lot of years. I mean, that's really been only in the last 3 or 4 years where I feel like we can put a program together and we could sell it at a high level, and we're truly choosing, and there's no European, they will still get asked, can we play the Gluckhardt, next to our composer? Like, no, we're not going to do that. I still get asked that, and I have to have those conversations still.
Great.
Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Howard, and my question is regarding audience engagement. You mentioned knowing your audience. In starting these discussions on diversity, what challenges have you come across?
When in having conversations with the audiences about diversity? Yeah.
Yes.
What challenges? Well, for me, I think it's about finding the sweet spot. Like how much, again, we all know as people of color in this community of classical music when we can express our identities or not, and finding that sweet spot where I feel comfortable and honored, and they do too, and just kind of spinning that place so that we can communicate and we can educate and we can share with each other, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges, and where I don't feel tokenized, using your word. I think it's a big challenge. Yeah.
I've found that my audiences are curious, and I take that curiosity not in like I don't see my role as like a missionary, and I'm an elite, and I'm imparting this wisdom, but I see it as being a sense of curiosity, and so let's create I take pride in trying to create a welcoming space, an approachable space. So if you're curious, approach me. Let's have a conversation. And I think, for me, again, this sort of one-to-one interface is the most powerful way that I can approach a conversation around diversity, because it's not some sort of blanket statement I can share for the masses and hope that it falls on some ears, but trying to treat each situation uniquely.
One more other tool that I was thinking about, how something I've been doing the last few years is when I'm having a conversation with anybody, a child, okay, a teacher, administrator, an audience member, I'm trying to talk less and listen more. Mm-hmm. And when I'm listening, I'm not listening to follow up, or I'm not listening to add, or I'm not listening to try to get more information. I'm just listening to seeing what I'm going to learn. And I really try to do that in concerts. It seems when I do concerts, I go into the audience before and in intermission and afterwards because I want to see who's there. And I want to feel comfortable. I want them to feel comfortable with me too, and really listening to just learn where they're coming from culturally and their approach to this concert.
So I think we have time just for one more question, and you will be the last.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm another hornist, actually. And I'm wondering about your collaborators, because it seems like this is really like a very personal, like I'm looking for myself and there's nowhere else to find it. And so I'm going to do it for me because nobody else is doing it. But I'm wondering about your collaborators and how much of it, the people that you work with in Quinteto Latino and in Castle of Our Skins are people who are looking for the same thing, or how much of it is just other musicians looking for a job, and like how do you balance that?
With me, it's myself and Anthony Green are the steers of the ship. So it's still a very, very small mom and pop kind of an organization. I intentionally try to rotate through. It's a flexible ensemble, so I try to rotate through so that yes, my audiences are experiencing something new, but also my musicians are experiencing something new and hearing narratives and being exposed to composers and stories that they otherwise hadn't, which is part of my mission of trying to foster cultural curiosity broadly, right? So for me, I take that very much to heart. And I also am really excited about how much I don't know. And I need to work with you. I need to work with you as a visual artist or a historian or a lecturer or another musician or a composer, because I need to learn. And I have this sort of insatiable drive that way. Like revel, in that fact of being able to work with a collaborator. So it's not, I mean, yes, I pay them, but it's, for me, an artistic exchange, and I treat it as such. And
I very similar, but I think the story I wanted to say was how I've been trying to have these conversations with other arts organizations, with arts educators, funders about diversity in the arts and cultural representation and cultural appropriation. And something happened after Trump was elected. I was always going to arts organizations and trying to have that conversation with them and just running into barriers, but I'm just going to keep saying it, I'm just going to say it. And then suddenly it reversed. That the dominant culture that runs our arts organizations was suddenly wondering, what did I do to create this too? And what tools can I use to create that change? And they started coming to me instead. How many calls that I filled last season? I'm creating another identity that's just as a consultant, around that. And I just wanted to name that. And so it's similar. It is a personal, something personal that I'm trying to do for myself, but really I'm trying to do it for my community too. And so if you want to be a part of that journey, and talk about it, I'm willing to talk to you, anybody.
So in the last minute, I don't know if you want to put up our contact slide, but in the last minute, Ashleigh, what would one piece of advice be to our audience if they're interested in doing this kind of work? What would you say?
I would say understand yourself and your intentions. Be very genuine with it. I think we'll put this on the website later, and there's a resource by Andrew Simone, Making Your Life as an Artist, who talks about the necessity. Music and arts, they're essential, like food and water. They're essential. That is such a huge responsibility. And again, my being a Black woman violist is, the strengths that I have to be able to offer, the uniqueness that I have to be able to offer. So find for yourself a real genuine, unique, only you are able to do this passion and run with it.
Armando, in the last 5 seconds, what would you say?
Something that's been going through my head around how when I talk to artists that I'm mentoring is artists of color trying to do this work is about self-care. Because what happens is we get a little bit of privilege, okay? And then we start spreading it to all the people around us that we really want to help, right? And we forget, and then we get tired, and it's hard for us. And I try to encourage them to do as much self-care first, And they were talking about this in the previous session too. And then when I go into those communities, I can be there 100%. So I think that's the piece of advice I want to say. It's about self-care, actually, because then I could be in the communities that need me, present for them and present for the change. Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
We learned so much.
doing this.
Thanks to all of you. Thank you to my friend for helping out. And please do be in touch with us. We're here all weekend, right?
Yeah,
Are we
I'm
here all
I'm
weekend?
here all weekend.
So,
Please come up and say hi, shake
Please
my
do.
hand, connect on
Likewise.
social media, please.
yeah. Thank you
All
all.
right.